The strange case of the Dyatlov Pass connection. Imagine standing on that mountain, the night wind cutting across your face, your breath freezing in the air. Snow crunches beneath your feet as you picture 9 young hikers running barefoot into the dark, leaving everything behind. Their tent ripped open from the inside, their supplies abandoned, their final moments frozen in time. Why would they do this? What force could drive experienced mountaineers into such chaos? That is the chilling question at the heart of the Dyatlov Pass mystery, an unsolved story that refuses to rest. At first glance, it looks like a tragedy of nature. The Ural Mountains are unforgiving, their winters brutal. Temperatures drop to -40, winds scream through the valleys, and survival depends on skill, preparation, and a bit of luck. The hikers had the skill. They had prepared carefully, and they were young, healthy, and determined. That's what makes this story so unsettling. They should have survived. By all logic, they should have returned. But something, on that night in 1959, ripped logic apart. The group left. That excitement, photographs recovered later, show smiles, laughter, the energy of youth facing a challenge. They carried skis, cameras, journals, reminders that this was not just a trek, but a shared adventure. Igor Dyatlov, their leader, had guided trips before. He was admired for his calm under pressure. His friends trusted him with their lives. That trust would soon be tested in the most horrific way imaginable. When the search party reached their campsite weeks later, they were met with silence. The tent stood partially buried in snow, its fabric torn open from the inside, as if someone had slashed their way out in desperation. Inside were boots, coats, gloves, food, everything needed to survive the freezing night. Yet outside, footprints trailed into the forest, thin lines in the snow leading away from safety. Some were barefoot, so Maine socks wore only one shoe. No one could understand why. The first bodies were found near a tall cedar tree, blackened from a fire. Their hands were raw, scraped as if they had tried to climb it in panic. The next bodies were found between the cedar and the tent, as though they had tried to crawl back to safety but never made it. Months later, when the snow melted, the remaining hikers were discovered in a ravine. Their injuries were horrifying. Fractured skulls, broken ribs, massive internal damage without external wounds, as if something had crushed them with invisible force. One woman's tongue was gone, another's eyes were missing. Official reports were vague, suggesting hypothermia and trauma, but ending with the haunting phrase, an unknown compelling force. But what was this force? An avalanche is the official explanation pushed in recent years. Yet, the tent wasn't buried. The injuries didn't match, and the footprints remained clear. Other experts pointed to katabatic winds, a rare but deadly weather phenomenon that can create hurricane-like bursts in mountain passes. Could the hikers have panicked and fled? Possibly, but why cut their way out of the tent instead of opening it? Why leave behind their boots in sub-zero temperatures? This is where the story deepens. Because while many argue about avalanches or weather, others whisper about secrets. Secrets tied to the Cold War, to Soviet experiments, and possibly even to American eyes watching from afar. The year 1959 wasn't just another year. It was the height of tension between the United States and the Soviet Union. Nuclear testing, spy operations, and intelligence missions were happening in remote corners of the world. Some researchers claim the area around Dyatlov Pass was used by the Soviet military for parachute mine tests, powerful devices dropped from planes that could cause the kind of internal injuries seen on the butt. Witnesses in nearby villages reported strange glowing orbs in the sky around the same time the hikers died. Were these experimental weapons being tested? And if so, what role did the U.S. play? Declassified American documents later revealed intense interests in Soviet activities in the Europe. Satellites, agents, and intercepted signals were constantly feeding information back to Washington. Could it be that U.S. intelligence knew something about the Dyatlov Pass incident that was never made public? Was this just a Soviet accident, or did it have international shadows? Adding to the puzzle, traces of radiation were found on the hikers' clothing. Radiation wasn't uncommon in Soviet research areas, but why on these students? Could they have unknowingly camped near a contaminated site, or were they exposed to something secret, something tied to weapons, both superpowers who were desperate to develop? The mystery doesn't stop there. Some of the hikers had connections to engineering and technical fields. One was a radio specialist. Another had worked in industries related to defense. Was this trip truly innocent? Or did someone suspect them of having knowledge they weren't supposed? If the Soviets suspected espionage, could they have silenced them? Or, even darker, could there have been an American hand somewhere in this story, watching, perhaps even testing the limits of human endurance in the Cold War shadow games? But maybe it was something simpler, yet just as chilling. Imagine the hikers in their tent. Deep in sleep, a strange sound echoes across the Pasilo. Unnatural, vibrating through the snow. Maybe it was a weapon test. Maybe it was a natural phenomenon. They panic, slash their way out, and run. They stumble into the forest, confused, barefoot, desperate. They light a fire, try to survive, but the cold is merciless. One by one, they fall, and the world is left with questions that will never be fully answered. Every explanation leaves gaps. Avalanches don't explain the radiation. Radiation doesn't explain the crushed bones. Military tests don't explain the missing eyes and tongue. And yet, all the pieces together paint a picture that is both terrifying and incomplete. Think about it. 9 lives cut short. 9 stories frozen in snow. Families never got real answers. Researchers have tried for decades, reopening the case again and again, but the truth slips through like snowflakes in the wind, tangible for a moment, then gone. And what about that U.S. connection? Was America just watching from a distance, gathering intelligence on Soviet failures? Or was there more? Could hidden archives in Washington or Moscow still hold the final piece of the puzzle? If they do, neither side has ever shared it. The Dyatlov Pass mystery endures because it sits at the crossroads of human tragedy, historical secrets, and the unknown. It is part survival story, part Cold War enigma, part supernatural legend, and it asks questions that resonate even today. How much do governments keep from us? How far do humans go in the pursuit of power? And how fragile is life when nature or something beyond nature turns against us? So, I'll ask you, what do you think really happened? Was it a freak accident? A secret experiment? A Cold War tragedy with an American shadow? Or something stranger? Something beyond explanation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your theory. And if this story drew you in, if it made you wonder about the mysteries still hidden in history, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and share this video. It helps us bring you more stories of unsolved history, ancient mysteries, and strange disappearances that still haunt our world. Because some stories never end. Day who's to wait. Frozen in time until someone dares to look closer. Stay connected. Thanks for watching.